Say.
All right. Okay, thank you. Again, this is going to be recorded to give chance to other people who will not be able to attend today's class. And of course, if you wish to review or maybe ganahan mo tanaw balik or mo learn balik to everything that we'll be discussing today, you can always watch it once I've already uploaded the class or the recorded lecture to my YouTube channel. Anyway, again, today we'll be talking about the visual elements of graphic designs. Before we learn to actual design, or before we learn the fundamentals, or perhaps using the industry standard software like Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, basically those industry standard software that we'll be using for graphic design, let us first learn what are the basics, the fundamentals, what are the elements, what are the things that we are going to include in our design, and how are we going to use them properly. And that is the visual elements or the things that will be included for our designs. Kumbaga, the recipe or yeah, the ingredients as to how are we going to cook our graphic design. So when we say visual elements, these are the building blocks in graphic design. A good design is product of creative visual ideas. However, visual ideas can only be just ideas without the manual work. Once one has to carefully plot the design elements to create a visual representation of the idea and the imagination. Okay, so if you can remember in our very first class, graphics design is about visual communication, thinking visually. So how are we going to use or how are we going to communicate visually? That is being able to properly and carefully use the visual elements, arrange it in the sense that it's going to be pleasing to the eye and we're able to convey information. So that is what we're trying to learn in this lesson. You will learn that when and how are we going to use the elements to compose a good design. So there are seven basic elements in or visual elements in of graphic design. So there are actually more than just these seven, but these are the basic elements of graphic design. So we have line, color, shape, form, texture, space, and typography. Okay, so these are the elements that we'll be using for us to create an actual graphic design. So let's start with the line. Line is the crucial element of graphic design. Lines are always more than just points that are strung together. Depending on their form, weight, length, and context, line can help organize information, define shapes, imply movement, and convey emotion. Yes, line is the most crucial element of graphic design because all the other elements, visual elements in graphic design, will include a line. Okay, there are other elements. We have color, shape, form, texture, space, and typography. All of this will involve line. That's why line is the most basic and the crucial visual elements. Now, in graphic design, or for graphic designers, we can either use line to be horizontal, lines can be vertical and diagonal. Lines can be straight, curved, or freeform. Okay, and then lines can be zigzag or create other patterns, and lines can may be solid, broken, or implied. Okay, so normally if we will talk about line, the one thing that we will say is kani moya tumahunaw na andayon, these are the lines, the straight or the curved lines, but there are more than just straight and curved lines. Okay, we have freeform, we have zigzag, we have broken, we have implied, we have other patterns. Okay, so when we say implied lines, these are the lines that are displayed or arranged in such a way that it will form another object. So let's say, for example, this. So if you can see, if we're going to kanang tarungon na to tanaw, these are just lines that are stacked together, that are arranged together in a way that it is now formed. It is now forming something else, which is in this case, mura siya og dalan, di ba? But in reality, if we're going to zoom it in, these are just stacks of lines. Okay, so that is, we can use line for creating implied images. So in this another example here, these are groups of lines that are arranged in such a way that it forms a hand, diba? And then we have here patterns, and then we can also use lines for creating textures, so on and so forth. Think about the kinds of lines you will see in your everyday life and recall the kinds of messages that they convey to you. Depending on their context, heavier, dark lines can communicate stability or underline. I'm sorry. Heavier dark lines are supposed to communicate stability. Okay, when we say stability, being stable, being firm, di ba? And then underline means threat. If naadaw ko na underline, usually it means there is a threat. And then scribbled lines can suggest excitement, confusion, or messiness. And zigzagged lines might express electricity or danger, while wavy lines can suggest fragility, elegance, uncertainty, or beauty. Okay, so these are the psychology, the line or visual element psychology. However, this is not psychology class, so we're not going to be talking more about it. But if you wish to learn about what the line represents when it comes to the psychological aspects, you might want to research on that. Anyway, moving on. This is some of the examples how line is being used for graphic design. So first, it is used as illustration. So line plays a role in building infographics, just like this one, and other illustration. So this is a simple tree diagram made out of lines. So if we'll zoom it in, diba? The branches, kani, they are all lines having different colors or different values, and then have different thickness, diba? And then if we're going to zoom it in, we can see that the icons inside the tree are also images or symbols that are made out of line. Okay, so basically, one of the most common use for a line is to create an illustration, just like this. Another use of line can be used to divide and draw emphasis. Okay, so let's try to take a closer look. It's not about ideas, it's about making ideas happen. So again, line can be used to divide and draw emphasis. So what are the words that we are trying to give emphasis? We're trying to give more emphasis here. So we have about ideas, making ideas. So by putting underline or lines below each word, diba, the emotion has changed. If we're going to remove this, then it will just say it's not about ideas, it's making ideas happen. But since we've used line to give emphasis to these words, this means about ideas and making ideas are supposed to be something that needs to be kanabang dapat it's really not it's not about the ideas, it's about making ideas happen, no. The emotion or the conviction of the thought has already increased, na intensified. It's because we give emphasis using line. Next is we can use line as borders. So in this example, lines are used to create a border. There are two stroke of lines that create the thick and thin border. Diba? Naidako, naigamay. This type of stroke line you can use in a relationship to other elements can define the look and feel of your composition. So since we gibutangan to siya frame, so it gives kuan ba importance to it's what exactly is inside the frame, di ba? Kung natay picture sa tuwa, if ato na siyang i-frame, that means that picture is really important. We want to we want everybody to be able to see that right away, di ba? Gina-display nato. So, since using line as border, we are trying to say that everything that is inside that border is supposed to be important. It is supposed to be relevant. Okay? And then we also used a line to divide the content, which is perhaps kaniyang title, kaniyang content, or the body, and then we separate them by including a line in between. So again, going back, we use, di ba, katong example, hold on, isa, ano ne? Okay, so example number 2, we use to divide and draw emphasis. Okay, in this case, we also divide these two contents into separate places by adding line in between. Okay, so again, we can use line as borders. Next, we can use line in structure. So in this example, lines are used to predominantly structure composition but at the same time decorate. So aside sa ato siyang gi-use to separate contents from number of chapter numbers and the chapter titles, and adding it every chapter. We also use it to decorate. Okay, as you can see, there is a very thick line, vertical line that separates the chapter number and the chapter title. And at the same time, we use another line to divide each chapter. Diba? So we use line in structure. Diba? We use line to illustrate. We use line to divide and draw emphasis. We use line as border. We use line in structure. Next is we use line, or another example for using line in structure is like this. Here, line makes up the border elements that frame a code, and a line is drawn vertically at line left, creating a base to carry the paragraph next to it. The lines in black and white could also be used to add a bit of color into the page as well as structure. Okay, so right here, we use lines to create some kind of a border to this quotation. And then we also use another line to carry out this kind of paragraph as the basis, diba? Since this is left and then since we draw a line here, if we are the reader, we will set our mind right away to the left side. So, kanimo una natin mabasa, it's because we draw something in it, which is, of course, a line. Diba? And another thing we also use, and this is very perhaps one of the most important thing, or kani, unahon sa nato ni, line as decoration. So aside from illustration, aside from border, aside sa to, aside sa giving emphasis and divide and then structure, we can also use lines for decoration. And perhaps this is the most common. So in this example, we are using lines to create decoration, texture, and structure on the page. So as you can see, I'm not sure if makita ninyo ni if you're using mobile phone, but if you're using desktop, then you will see that this line, these groups of lines contains or consists of lines as well. So that is already a pattern or texture. And then we also use line to kato atong gihibo gaina. Again, overall, we are trying to decorate or we're trying to improve the appearance of this page by adding line as decoration. And then we can use line, or lastly, we can use line in dividing information. This is very common for newspapers, tabloids rather, or any publication like books or anything like that. So as you can see, we use line to divide the contents from this page or from this part and this part. And then we use line to separate, to structure, and divide information. Since this information, for example, this one, the information or this article talks about something else, di ba? Diri nga side, we separate it nga para makabalo ang mga readers nga kani siya lahi po ni ay nga content by adding line to it. Okay? So we separate the line or we separate the information by adding a line. So ang line nga to gigamit, it's not just kaning visible lines, but also this kaning mga column. Kabantay mo? There are two columns here and they're separated with a line, although it's not really a visible solid line, but the column itself, it is arranged vertically. Vertically, they are separated with a white line, kumbaga, or space. So still, that is a line, although it's not solid and it's not clearly visible. So that is line. Taisa, can I message? Okay, all right. For those who won't be able to attend this class, it's okay. Just let me know. Anyway, again, we are currently recording this class, so you'll be able to watch it later on. All right. So that is line. Okay. Another visual element for graphic design is color. Color plays one of the biggest roles in graphic design. It can give emphasis, it can be used as a mechanism of organization, it can create impact and create a specific look and feel in a piece of graphic design work. Okay? So there's something with colors that makes everything interesting. Okay? Whenever you see a graphic design like logo, without the color, it's fine. If you see any designs at all, without the color, it's fine. but whenever we add color to it, it really changes the mood. It really changes or intensifies the mood, the emphasis of each element included. So let's say for example, um, when we are kanang sa mga photographs, if mo picture ta og natay photograph nga makita niya black and white. So something or the mood is maybe something down, 'di ba? Medyo ubos ang mood. It could be either it's because it's a the picture is about death, it's about being gloomy, it's about being sad, all right, without the color. However, if we're going to add colors to it, the mood suddenly changes. Mausog siya significantly because that is the power of color. And again, it plays the biggest role in graphic design. I'm just gonna check it every now and then. Okay, all right, it's still good. Padungog lang ko, everybody.
No, sir.
Okay,
Demo pressure.
ako nang giklaro kay basig ako nang giklaro kay basig gas tabi ko nya wala na dai. All right, anyway, again, going back, color really um, plays one of the biggest role in graphic design because again, it just by adding color to your graphic design, the mood, the emotion will significantly change. And color in graphic design, however, have can be divided in two particular categories. So we have primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. I know you remember this back when you were still in elementary. In your art class, siguro, kay numdum pamana, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. These are the, kumbaga, categories of color, types of colors. So when we say primary colors, that includes yellow, red, and blue. Okay, when the primary colors are defined as the pure pigment colors. That means when we say pure pigment, um, these are the purest of colors. That means there are no combinations of any other color that will come up with the primary color. That means, what I mean to say is, for example, if ganahan ka mo produce og yellow, diba? Ang uban nga colors, you just have to combine the colors to produce them. But for yellow, red, and blue, there's no such colors that if you're going to combine them, you will produce yellow, blue, and red because the red or yellow, red, and blue are the purest of the colors. Okay, that is the primary colors. The secondary colors, however, these are the immediate results of mixing two primary colors. So if we're going to combine the yellow and red, we will come up with orange. And then if we're going to combine red and blue, we will come up with a violet. And then if we're going to combine blue and yellow, we'll come up with green. Okay, so the secondary colors are the combination or the immediate combination of the two primary or sorry, the secondary colors are combination of the primary colors. Diba? So that's just what I'm talking about. If you wanted to produce orange, then you only need to do is to combine yellow and red. If you wanted to produce green, all you need to do is yellow and blue. So that is primary colors. The tertiary colors, however, are the combination of both the primary and the secondary color. So let's say, for example, if we're going to combine yellow and green, then we will have yellow-green. All right? Again, yellow and green, we will have yellow-green. If we're going to combine yellow and orange, we will have yellow-orange. And then if we're going to combine yellow and red, we will have yellow and violet. Sorry, no. Yellow and blue, we will come up with, I'm sorry, green. Nalimot ako. Yellow and green, we have yellow-green. And then if we're going to combine green and blue, then we have a cyan or blue-green, diba? Okay, the cycle continues. So all of these colors can be found on a color wheel. So if you can see, diba, the color is kanang nag-cycle ang color ba? Alright? So one of the most important tool for us graphic designer, if you want to learn graphic designing, is a color wheel. Okay, color wheel is something that everybody or every graphic designer must have. Okay, or at least you're familiar with um uh, hold on. Okay, at least you'll be familiar with the color wheel because color wheel is one of the most important tool for graphic designers. Okay, so here this is the complete perhaps chart of the primary colors. You might want to take a screenshot again. So this is the color wheel. We have all the primary colors, the secondary colors, and the tertiary colors. So we have primary colors yellow, red, blue, secondary orange, violet, and green, and then tertiary yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, green, and yellow, green. Okay, so that is the categories of color, the types of colors. Now, next, we'll talk about the color temperature. Okay? So, say temperature, di ba? We have, it could be either warm or cool. Warm or cold, di ba? Kung na siya temperature. Now, if we're going to divide the color wheel into two groups, kung ato na siya i-divide, just like that, we will get cool and warm colors. Okay, again, if we're going to divide the color wheel into two, we will have cool colors and warm colors. The cool colors will be itong gikan sa yellow green down to the red violet or blue ba niya? Red violet. Okay. So from yellow green to red violet, these are considered cool colors, and from the yellow down to the uh red violet. I'm not real sure sa laning color to ni. Okay, so these are the warm colors. Again, all you need to do is you're just going to divide the color wheel. You'll get the cool and warm colors. Now, this is very important. This is very important for us to help us choose the right color schemes. Okay, so let's say for example you will be asked to design a, let's say, a website, and the client wants na ang color na good is cool colors. Ganun sila nga cool colors. So at least you know that you'll not be using the colors from the spectrum. The colors that you will be using must be in the spectrum only, 'di ba? So that is to give you an idea what are the colors that you're going to use depending on the specification that the client asks, right? Or the overall mood. If there's a mood that you wanted to accomplish on your design, then the first thing you're going to check is the color temperature. The color temperature, the colors that you will be using as the overall, to provide the overall mood of your design. Okay? So that is the color temperature. Okay, so to help us choose interesting color combinations that have harmony together or create contrast, there are some color rules that we can explore. Okay, so we have this color temperature, but there are more color rules that we have to explore when learning graphic design. So these are called color harmony. Okay, so these color harmony includes monochromatic colors, analogous colors, complementary colors, and triadic colors. Okay, so again, these is an example of color harmony rule. The first one is monochromatic colors. When we say monochromatic colors, these are shades and tints of the same color. So that means it's the same color. However, it has different shades and tints. When we say shades, it could be either light or dark. And then when we say tints, it could be either kanang when we say tint is the relationship between a color and the other colors. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Let's say for example, a yellow. Okay. So when we say what are the monochromatic colors of yellow? So obviously we have light yellow to dark yellow. Okay, nagets lang? So when we say monochromatic from the term, diba, from the prefix mono, that means one. One color but different shades and tints. Just like the second example, blue. So what are the monochromatic colors of blue? We have the light blue and then the dark blue. And then same goes with the red and the rest of the colors. So that is monochromatic colors. So here are some of the examples on how monochromatic colors are used for graphic design. Na ay medyo lang sa background. Can you turn off your microphone real quick?
Liza, Liza.
Al dili ko kita og kinsa kana dili ko kita og kinsa pero
Convas, convas.
balik balik og turn off kay murag dili ko dong ko. Alright. Okay, it's okay. Let's continue. Let's continue. Bahala na. Makadungog naman dagay mo.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Anyway, again, these are some of examples of graphic design that uses monochromatic colors. So, diba, as you can see, there is one specific rule that, or there is one specific color that stands out to the overall design, diba? For example, this it could be either orange. So this particular graphic design uses orange as the color and uses monochromatic colors to create the overall kuan, to fill the entire graphic design. So we have light orange to dark orange, diba? Another example is this one. So it uses red as the base color and uses monochromatic colors of red to fill up the entire graphic design. Okay, so still it looks very good depending on the emotion that you're um, trying to evoke, diba? So siguro kaning first nga picture, it's about summer, it's about sunset, diba? And then in the second, maybe it's about, since it's red, it could be either it's Valentine's, something like that. I'm not really sure, but you get the idea, right? Depending on saan nyo pag get ang color. Alright, so that is monochromatic colors. Next is we have analogous colors. Analogous colors are those found close to each other on the color wheel. Okay, so the difference between the monochromatic colors and the analogous colors is that ano siya kung ka-disconnect. Okay, the difference between the monochromatic and analogous color is in monochromatic there should be only one color that is being used, but with multiple shades and tints. And analogous colors will be using multiple colors. However, the colors are found next to each other, close to each other. Diba? So for example, here, yellow. What are those colors of yellow? So when you say analogous colors, these are the colors that are next to that color themselves. So yellow, then the analogous color would be yellow, orange, and orange. Or it could be either yellow, green, and green. Diba? That is analogous colors. So analogous colors can be found close to each other on the color wheel. Okay. For example, what are those colors for, let's say, red? So we have red, violet, or red, red, orange, and orange. Okay? Magtapad na dapat ang mga analogous colors. Okay? So this is an example of a graphic design that uses analogous colors. Diba? So here, if you can look at if we're going to look at the color wheel, the colors that are being used are violet, red, then orange, then yellow, orange, and yellow. Diba? Looking at this picture, we cannot find colors that are green, we cannot find colors that are yellow, green, blue, blue, violet. Everything is in this side of the color wheel. So this is an example of a graphic design that uses color, analogous color. So analogous colors typically work well together since they have similar origins. Like the monochromatic colors, they are also balanced and typically more interesting as these colors have more contrast. So analogous colors provides contrast. Next is we have complementary colors. When we say complementary colors, these are those found on the opposite ends of the color wheel. Okay? So basically, atbang na siya. If ang analogous colors the top, ang complementary colors are opposite side of the color wheel. So for example, are the complementary color of what is the complementary color of yellow? It's violet, or yeah, violet. And then what is the complementary color of, let's say, orange? So blue. Okay, so the opposite side of the color wheel. Kumbaga, kung sa ato pa ng term, iyahang opposite nga color, iyahang negative, di ba? I'm not sure if kabalangan katong mga karaang camera na ay negative films, alright? So muna siya. That is using complementary colors at atbang sa iyang color wheel. So complementary colors have high contrast, which produce vibrant, exciting color schemes. As implied, complementary colors enhance each other and typically always work well together. Since they're at the since they are on the side of the color wheel, most of the time they have the same brightness and they have the same they have the same brightness and contrast. That means they will work harmoniously or they will produce vibrant and harmonious nga combination if they're being combined. So let's take a look at this example. So this is an example of graphic design that uses complementary color. So the colors are being used is cyan or blue green and then some orange, diba? Now if we're going to take a look, every single detail of the entire graphic design or entire poster is clear, visible, vibrant. It's because they're using complementary colors. And again, complementary colors offers or produce vibrant and high contrast. Diba? Munang klaro siya kaayo. So that's it. And then next, we have triadic colors. Triadic colors are those basically on the color wheel. Okay? Triadic colors are those spaced equally on the color wheel and they typically produce vibrant effects. Just like the rest of the color harmony rules, triadic colors also offers or produce vibrant effects. So, if you've noticed, on triadic colors, from the terms such as triad, di ba? They're at or equal sides, di ba? Wala dapat ang meaning of triad. So, if we go to take a look at the color wheel, so the three colors that are spaced equal to each other, they are the triadic colors. So, rule of thumb, all you need to do is count four colors. So, one, if you wanted to determine what are the triadic color of yellow, all you need to do is count four colors. One, two, three, four. And then another one, two, three, four. Then we have the colors of yellow are red and blue. Same with orange, the triadic color would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, violet, and 1, 2, 3, 4, green. Okay, so that is triadic colors. This is an example of a graphic design that uses triadic colors. Okay, the colors that are used are we have yellow, orange, violet, and yellow, blue. I'm sorry, I'm not going color. Kung bahala. But if we're going to look at the color wheel, they are evenly spaced. Triadic. Okay, so I told you a while ago that one of the very useful tool for a graphic designer is again color wheel. However, swerte ta, it's lucky for us. Adobe.com or the Adobe offers free tool that will allow us to determine what are the analogous colors, monochromatic colors, stride colors, and so on and so forth. Basically, will help us with the color harmony. And that is by going through color.com. You will find this tool. So let's go to that para nata idea kung saan na. Example. Again, color.adobe.com. Okay, medyo hina yung connection ng panahon na. Please bear with me. Alright, okay, here. So these tool will enable you to determine what are the color harmonies. It will automatically find the color harmony that you want. So for example, all you need to do is, i-click lang ninyo ning sa right side, or sa left side rather. Diba? Here. We have analogous, monochromatic, triad, and complementary. So these are the only four color harmonies that we've discussed. However, there are more color harmonies. We have split complementary, double split complementary, square, compound, shades, etc. However, these four color harmony rule are the basic. So of course, you can still learn more about the other harmony rule on your own. Okay, so for example, I want the analogous color of any color that I want. So all you need to do is drag this kaning mga color in a circle, drag it to wherever you wanted to put it into, kana, and then the color wheel itself will automatically determine what are the analogous color that is appropriate for that color that you just selected. So here we have this. Kani, for this particular color, the analogous color is kani. Kana. So all you need to do whenever you're already doing your graphic design, your Photoshop ba or a CSS for web designing, just copy this kaning code, then it will give you the actual color which is kani. All right, this is called hexadecimal color or hexadecimal code for this particular color. Same thing with monochromatic. Just click on that, and then just drag this circle to wherever you want it to point to, and then it will automatically display the monochromatic color. Again, monochromatic color, if you can remember, these are the colors or the different shades and tints of the same color. And then we have triad, same thing, and imo na siya i-drag, and then it will automatically give you the suggested triadic colors. Alright? So, sa'yo na lang siya kayo. But, if you wish to dili ka ganahan mag-set on your own, you can always go to explore. If you want to find any colors, if problema kay nimo unsa ang pag-combine of colors, you can always go to kanang explore nga tab. Medyo hina yung connection. Please bear with me. Okay, and then you can choose these color combinations that they've already provided by graphic artists around the world. So you all need to do is just click that and then just copy the codes of each color. Okay, so medyo sayo na lang siya kayo for us graphic designers to choose how are we go to decide what are the colors that we are going to use for our design. Okay, so that's it. Next we have next visual element is shape. Everything is ultimately a shape. All objects are composed of shapes and all visual elements are shapes in some way. In design, shapes have two dimensions and are measured by their height and width. Okay, so how do we know that an object is basically a shape? It's because if there are only two dimensions of whenever it only has two dimensions, that means it can only be measured by height and width. Okay, so shapes can be formed or can be kana bang mahimo siyang shape unsa man na. Shapes can be formed perhaps as a line. Shape can be formed in color, and shape can also be formed in negative space. So when we say shape as a line, so basically, for example, how do we know that this is a circle? It's because we see a line that are drawn around. So basically, we use line shape. In this example, how do we know that this is a circle? Because there is a color that is formed by diba? If kanigi because of the line color, right? And then here we see there is a space. So what is negative space? We'll talk more about it. But when we say negative space, it's the absence of the main object or the visual element. So if this is the visual element, kaning square, na gitang tang a circle sa nga gibangan circle. So that is how we form the circle. Diyan nakita ang circle. So that is negative space. Anyway, we'll talk more about negative space in just a few moments. Okay, so shapes are used to add interest and substance to a piece of info or substance to a piece of graphic work. They can be used to decorate, they can be symbolic, and can be used to create patterns and textures. So aside from these basic shapes that we are showing you now, shape can also be used to decorate, symbolic, and can be used to create patterns and textures. Okay, so these are example of patterns and textures. So all of these textures or patterns are composed of shapes. Yeah? So there are two types of shapes. We have geometric shapes organic shapes. So geometric shapes are the shapes that can be drawn using a ruler or compass. Whether simple or complex, these shapes produce a feeling of control and order. Okay, so when say geometric shapes, these are something that you can do on your own using measuring tools like ruler, compass. So let's say, for example, for us to create a square, we have to use a ruler or some kind of measurement tool for us to be able to create straight lines, four straight lines that are connected to each other, right? So we'll also be using compass to create a circle. Same with the rest of these shapes right here, diba? So whenever you see a shape that can be used or that can be drawn using measurement tools, that is called geometric shapes. Now, organic shapes are shapes that can be drawn freehand or shapes that can be found in nature. So these shapes will no longer require to use measuring tools because the flow or the direction of the sides of the objects or shapes are dili gani siya straight, dili kada bang it doesn't have any control, di ba? And another example, or most common organic shapes are shapes that can be found in nature, di ba? So, okay, for example, how are you this? There's no other way to create this shape rather than just using your hand. You cannot use any sorts of measuring tools to create this called organic shapes. In design, geometric and organic shapes can combine together on many levels to create various design elements we use to communicate. So one example of this is the brand logos at its purest form. So these are some of the some logos that uses both geometric and organic shapes. All right. So kinsa ninyo ang makaila ita logo? Anybody? Kinsa kailaan ni tanan nga logo daw? Nakita na ako ni download na ako ni.
Wala, sir.
Wala.
Adobe Illustrator,
Nike sir.
Adobe Illustrator, Twitter,
Okay,
Nike,
sige daw.
Twitter.
Alright, ato daw.
Adobe
Kailangan na to
Illustrator,
eh.
Adobe Acrobat, Twitter,
Then Google Chrome.
Apple Windows,
Alright.
Huawei.
Okay, so ako. Ako rin gi-download so wa pa ko kabalo sa uban ani. But we have here kani. This is Time Warner. Time Warner. This is state cable company in the US. This WWF or World Wide Fund. We have the Olympic and then Chrome. Kani wa ko kabalo sa na. Ano sa na? And then
Na yung mga sakinan og guwan tatak.
kani sa Nissan dili pud puro. I don't know. All right, and then kani
Hunter,
Nissan.
Nissan,
All right. And then we have here it's CBS, right? CBS kanan cable company sa US. Xbox, Linux, Mitsubishi, NBC, Nike, Volkswagen, Windows, Apple, Chanel, Twitter. Okay. All right. So these are just some examples of logo that uses various geometric and or organic shapes, diba? Some of the logo can be recreated using rulers or measuring tools, diba? Let's say Mitsubishi. Pwede kayo nato ng swiron using measurement tools. Kaning Domino Pizza, kaning Volkswagen, and the rest. However, kaning logo, kaning candle, kaning Linux, kaning WF. Yes, katurang mga maayong mo drawing ang makasuid ani nila. It's because they have their own kuan ba, nasa ilang specific na design, right? So these three are examples of organic designs, and then the rest are taken geometric shapes. Okay? Tayo sa ano nawala ko. Nalobat ay akong headset. Anyway. Okay. So these are examples of how another examples of how shapes are being used for design. So first is we have illustration. This first, building a legible image as an illustration. So it looks like diba, a bust of some ancient Greek goddess, god or something. But if you're going to zoom in, it's a combination of shapes. Diba? Kani mga geometric shapes that are being placed in such a way that it forms an illusion that it is a man. It's a bust of a man. So we can use shapes to create, and then here in the second example, we use shape in creating um, a shape in a composition. Diba? So by just however, it's not really circle. It's really not circle at all. It's because it's parang ang half na niya, sorry, ang pikas is half nga circle, and then the rest is combination of texts. However, it forms or basically overall it creates a composition of okay. And here we use shapes to decorate, build, illustrate, and hint another shape. So shapes are being combined to form like number three shape, diba? And then we use shape to create texture and pattern. So shape is what makes up the foundation of any composition. A layout can be simple, made up of one or few shapes, or complex, made of groups of many individual shapes, diba? In shape or in design, shape can be used in many ways. It's how they are arranged that determines the visual outcome. So when creating a composition, you must always consider how the shapes interact and work together to present and communicate the intended message. All right? So that is shape. Next is we have form. Form is described as any three-dimensional object. Forms are the 3D equivalents of shapes and as such are measured by their height, width, and depth. Okay? So if you can remember, gaina, ang shape or ang shape na ara dapat siya or shapes can only be measured by its length and width. Ang form can be measured by its or yeah, can a form can be measured by its length, width, and depth. Right? So let's try to compare the two. This picture is called shape because by just looking at it, we know for a fact that it is flat. So that means it only has height and width. As for the second image, however, because of the light and the shadows that are beautifully or being arranged or being applied to each side, it gives the illusion of having depth. Although there is no exact or real depth on it because after all, flat naman gihapon siya. However, by just looking at it, our mind tells us that this is a 3D object. It's because of how the shadow and light works with the entire position. Diba? Nagets rin ninyo? So because of the light and shadow, our mind tells us that this is a 3D object. So therefore, this is a form. So between the shape and form is that the shape can only tell us the height and width. The form will tell us the height, width, and the depth or ang gilalumon, ang gibagoon. Okay? Forms don't have to be three-dimensional daw. So although gaina we specifically discussed that form are three-dimensional objects, but it doesn't really necessarily have to be three-dimensional objects all the time. They can also be implied through illustration, using techniques like light, shadow, and perspective to create the illusion of depth. So let's say, for example, the first image, this is an exact, a real 3D object. However, on the second part, it's just an illustration, di ba? Illustration siya, drawing siya. However, because of the light, the dark area are being kanabang shadow and light of the object, it gives us the idea or it gives us the illusion of depth, right? So although this is still a flat design, but because of this light and shadows, it gives us the idea or our mind tells us that this is still a 3D image. So basically, this is a form. Again, using the lights, the shadows, and perspective. Form makes realism possible. Okay, let's take a look at these two photographs that we have here. So on the left side, we have a ball which looks very realistic because of how the light and shadow plays a role in, or in determining the depth of the image. Diba? If we're going to compare it to the image, the second image doesn't have any shades, doesn't have any shadow and light effects on it. Therefore, it's not, or basically it is unrealistic. So the first photo is realistic and the second one is not. So therefore, the first one is a form and then the second one is just shape. Okay. So again, what makes this form realistic is because of the light, shadow, and perspective. Forms are also basically we can also set or we can also create forms for less realistic image. So let's take a look at this example that we have here. These are just flat designs, diba? The shot, however, since gibutangan gyapon na siya og light shows in very simple way or very minimalist way, it still gives us the idea that there is a depth in it. So therefore, this is still a form. Diba? Sa ang light here. Then we have here. So though it's very minimalist, it's flat, minimalist, but because of this light and shadow, tells us that this picture has depth. Okay, so in everyday composition, the purpose of form is the same, but on a smaller scale. For example, a simple shadow can create the illusion of layers or give an object a sense of place. Okay, so that is form. So just like shape, there are also two types of forms. So we have geometric and organic forms. So geometric forms are forms that appear to be man-made. Whether simple or complex, these produce a feeling of control, order, and appear clean and sterile. Organic forms are forms that appear more natural. Organic forms, whether simple or complex, produce natural feels. So basic forms can bring a touch of realism to your work, which is a powerful tool when used in moderation. Okay, so same ra gyapon ang form, same ra gyapon the shape. It has two types, geometric and organic. Geometric, so these are the forms that appear to be man-made, something that can be created using measuring tools or using our hands. And then for organic forms, these are the forms or objects that can be kanabang makita nato siya or that appears to be more natural. Right? So that's it for form. Next, we have texture. Another visual element for graphic design is texture. Texture is a way a surface feels or perceived to feel. Although we don't necessarily, whenever we touch our screen, whenever we touch the photo, we cannot feel anything other than just how the surface of the device feels like. However, everything is man psychological in graphic design because we are doing visual thinking man, di ba? So, for example, by just looking at these photographs, although we cannot touch it, but we know how it feels if we touch it in real life, or ba? For example, how, how would we feel if we touch these textures? Diba kani rough, rough. Diba? These patterns. Since this is sharp, so maybe this is sharp as well. And then medyo swirly, curly, so this could be swishy or medyo uh, sito ka na gummy bear or something like that. Mura siya sito na. I forgot the term. Humok ba ka na humok? Okay, so that is texture. So although we cannot touch it physically, but in our mind, whenever we look at this picture, we felt something. Texture is used to create visual tone and can influence the look and feel of a piece of graphic design work. It is also used to attract or repel interest to an element depending on the pleasantness of the texture. So there are two types of texture. We have image texture and pattern texture. Image texture is generated from a combination of organic and geometric shapes and color. It can be simple or complex and generally appears random to create a particular look and feel. All right, so everything is random for texture, image texture. So let's take a look at these examples. So these are the image textures. We have environmental textures, biological textures, and man-made textures. So for environmental textures, it can be either wood, grain, sand, water, and the stars in the sky, di ba? The textures that we can find in the environment from the term suggests or from any from our surroundings. So from the term suggests environmental. And then biological can be skin, fur, feathers, and animal prints. Okay, so biological textures are the textures that we can find on living things, diba? Biological, diba? And then man-made textures can be paintings, illustrations, dyes, cloth, paper, typography, photographic effects, etc. So from the term suggests, man-made, these are textures that we created. Just like this, camouflage, brush strokes, pixels, and then drawings or effects for that matter. So these are called image textures. Now, pattern texture is also generated from organic or geometric shapes and color through pattern texture. Pattern texture is mostly manufactured. Patterns can be simple or complex, but unlike image texture that are generally random, patterns appear more structured. Okay? So if image struct textures kanang random ang iyang shapes, ang iyang form, something like that. For pattern, structured, similar, consistent. Okay? So for pattern, there are also two types. There are three types rather. So we have environmental biological patterns, and then we have man-made patterns. So going back to the definition, patterns appear to be more structured and consistent. So let's take a look. So for this first example, we have a butterfly. So whatever it is on the right side also appears to be exactly the same on the left side. So there is repeatedness. This is consistency, and the overall design perhaps is structured. Same with this canning beehive, and then we have this flower, and then the snake skin. Okay, so everything is supposed to be similar, repeating, and structured. Unlike sa image textures nga random. Okay, and then we also have man-made patterns. Okay, like gift wraps, photo shoot backdrops, floor tilings, wallpaper. So everything is, di ba? Nagbalik-balik lang uban, nagbalik-balik lang design, but everything is man-made. Environmental biological patterns can be seen in our surroundings. Patterns are something that us, created. Right? So that is texture. Next is we have space. So another visual element for graphic design is what you call space. Space creates the visual essence and dynamic of a composition. So, madungog, napa mo?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Okay, again, medyo taas ang atong discussion. It's because this course or this lesson is supposed to be 1 week long or maybe 2 weeks if we're doing this face to face. But since we'll only be meeting once a week lang, or we'll be conducting classes once a week lang, so medyo solito na lang nato. Anyway, this is just today. And then next week, we will have another lesson to discuss na po. Anyway, so space is another visual element and it is the essence and dynamic of a composition. So these are examples of space. We will learn what exactly is space in graphic design in just a few moments. So first, let us understand that there are two types of space. We have positive space and negative space. So the positive space, these are the shape that is considered as the main focus of the page. So let's for example, this one. So since in if this is a graphic design, this is the main or this is the main focus, Therefore, this is the positive space. The negative space, however, is the white or empty space created by the absence of design or visual element. So for example, if this is the graphic design, if this is the positive space, then the empty space in which the the main focus is absent, that is why you call negative space. Kumbaga, kung sa ato pa ng example gaina, muna siyang naibang design, that is the negative space or the empty space in which the main focus of the visual element is missing. Okay, so that is so let's take a look at this example. So this is a very creative way on how negative space is used for graphic design. Kumbaga. So by just looking at it, it gives us the illusion that there are at least two some sort of animal that are hugging. Naghalog nga duwa ka animal. It could be either bear. I'm not real sure. Okay, so if we're going to asa ang positive space? Anybody? Ang black o ang white?
Ang white.
White, sir.
Sure?
White, sir. Anong white, sir?
Ang positive? Going back to the definition, negative space is the white or empty space man daw. Di ba? So if we're going to take a look, so if this is the canvas, if mo itong canvas, natay and then ang square na picture includes black object and then white object. So the black object is our positive space. And then ang bangag, kaning white, is our negative space. Alright? So if this is our positive space, this is our negative space. Ang bangag ba? Or ang empty space in which there are no more positive, or there are no more visual elements. So that is negative space. Alright? So another example, this one. So, unsa lang siguro ni nga object? Kanay, unsa lang siya?
Mama? Apple, sir.
Apple nga gikagat. Alright? And then, what are things that we can see? Apple.
Shape of the face, sir.
Okay, nice shape na face. Alright? So, Snow White daw, o siguro ang witch, diba?
Sir.
The negative space is kaning Snow White o kaning witch. Alright? Again, always remember that the negative space refers to the space or the empty space in which the sakto ba akong grammar? In which the main focus is no longer is missing basically. Kung wala gani ang visual element diya dapita, so that is the empty space or the negative space. Okay, so there are lots of examples on how negative space is used in graphic design. Pwede mo mag-search. Mag-search ko na tagkadali ba. So, negative space. Okay, so here are some other examples on how negative space is used for graphic design. So, kani. Kana. Diba? It looks like penguins. And then, kaning naong ni... Kinsa ni siya? Kinsa ni? Kana.
Snow White, sir.
Snow
Snow White. Okay, Snow White. Alright.
Snow White, sir.
So, ang face ni Snow White nawala. So, basically, ang face ni Snow White is the negative space, and then the hair, the lips are the positive space. Kanipod. Same ani. Okay? So, these are just example of how negative space is being used in graphic design. Anyway, space is not just about positive and negative space. There are also other examples in where the space is used in graphic design. So in design, what creates positive and negative space is the arrangement and the visual appearance of shapes within a composition. So in two-dimensional design, proximity, overlap, opacity, light, shadow, and perspective can be applied to shapes to create visual dynamics. For example, okay, proximity. When we say proximity, these shapes are from one another. The grammar. Okay, okay. The distance of proximity refers to the distance of shapes from one another, far apart or close together. So let's say, for example, in this area, the visual elements. Okay, let's consider this kind of lines. Visual. Let's consider these lines be the visual elements. So in this part, the visual elements are apart from each other. And then in this area, the visual elements are close to each other. So the distance between the visual elements from each other are called proximity. So if they are kung layo sila or dool pod sila. Okay, so that is proximity. Island distance from each other. Next is overlap. Overlap refers to the effect where shapes are arranged to appear to be on top of each other. So this is overlapping because they are far from each other. However, when we close or when we move the visual elements closer, di na magsugod ang overlapping. Okay? So for example, let's take a look. And kaning particular visual element is maybe mas nailaluman siya aning nga element, and this element is nailaluman pud siya aning element, and then the cycle continue. So if there are overlapping, or if one of the visual element is on top of each other, then there is already overlapping of space. Okay, that is overlapping. Opacity. Opacity refers to the effect where the objects appear to be transparent. Okay, so whenever you set the transparency of a certain object, then that is why you call opacity. So for example, if one object is set to be 50% transparent, and then ang another, then duwa ka objects get set of 50% transparent, then overlap siya, what will happen? If two objects is set to 50% opacity and then overlap siya, what will happen? Anybody? An idea? Napa ba ko?
Mag-occupy siya.
Mustak sila, sir.
Ha?
Yes, sir.
Mustak sila, sir.
Ay, unsa may tabo sa color?
Mo kuan og mayo sir mo kanang layo ba?
Di ba? Okay. For example, 50% nga
Wala
transparency. Ya, duwa ka buok. Mahimo na siyang 100%. Diba? So it's no longer transparent. It is a solid color. Diba? So that is called, that is setting the transparency of any objects. Now, if nag-face-to-face pa taron, I would like to show it to you. However, it will take a lot of time and medyo maglisod ta. So hopefully next time na lang. As we go along with this course, we're going to use proximity, opacity, and the rest of the space, managing the space using Photoshop soon if makasugod na ta. Next is we have light and shadow. It creates three-dimensional look. Okay, so in this example, nasa shadow, and what happened is nasa shadow pero may, and then second image nasa shadow. So what situation ka now? What is the difference between the two? Anybody?
Ang usa sir dool sa example na sa lamisa dool kayo siya niya kanang dili mo kayo makita ng iyang kuan kanang shadow niya if kana pong usa gipalayo siya gipasaka siya gamay sa lamisa man na siya no?
All right, very good observation. Okay, so when we see that the shadow is gamay lang klaro, then we know that these two are close to each other, diba? Or these two are close to perhaps the wall or sa lamesa. Since doon, bantay mo, if mas doon sa surface, mas klaro inyong shadow and then mas dark. Compared if mas tayo, mas blurry and mas sanap, di ba? So therefore, if we're going to look at these photos, or perhaps these objects or visual elements are much closer together and they're closer to the wall or any surface compared to this. So basically, it creates three-dimensional look. The lights and shadow creates three-dimensional look of the visual elements. And then we have perspective. So, ang perspective, muna siya ay kanaganing if mas dool nimo, mas klaro. If mas layo nimo, mas gamay, mas hanap. Diba? So, that is perspective. Effect created when shapes are set to look like they appear on real life. Perspective is created through arrangement, creation, and manipulation of shapes to look like they are they appear in real life. This is the effect where shapes appear to get smaller the further away they get. Perspective can also be achieved through the use of relative sizes of objects, overlapping, plus blurring and sharpening of objects. So let's say, for example, yung perspective. So in this particular photo, we can see that this element is closer to you. That's why it's clearer, it's bigger, and then kanin nalayo. That's why it gets lighter and it gets blurry. Same thing with the rest of these images. Okay, so that is perspective in space. Okay, do you have any questions so far? Okay, so in design, there is no way to determine the depth of the space. Diba? There's no way na masukod nato kung sa siya kalaluma. It's because we're just looking at a um, two-dimensional device. Diba? We're using either we could be looking it through our computer screen or giprint pa nato siya sa papel. There's no way that we can actually measure the depth, but kuan lang, we use the space, di ba? We use the space, or basically the example of space like the shadow, perspective, in telling the viewers that na depth ba sa graphic design, depending on how we use the space, kumbaga. Alright? So, that is space. Last, we have typography. Okay, the last visual element for graphics design is typography. Typography refers to the technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. Okay, so I know if you can remember the very first meeting in our introduction to, or not very first meeting, but in our very first lesson, aside from the orientation, we talked about graphic design is about picture that speaks 1,000 words, di ba? Picture. Ano sa to? Ano sa to yung exact na word na? Picture paints 1,000 words? Limot ko. Okay. However, since we are trying to convey information, although we can convey information just by create or thinking visually, mas maayo jud nga magbutang ta og text. Alright? So that is where typography comes in. How are we going to write text in such a way that it's going to be appealing to the eye and it can convey communication? So that is typography. So the arrangement of type involves selecting the typefaces. When we say typefaces, so sa ato pa na nga terminology, ang font ba? Unsa nga font imong gagamit? But in graphic design, that is called typeface. Okay, the point sizes or the size of the font or the text, and then the line length, and then the letter spacing and kerning. So when we say kerning, the distance between two texts or two letters. Okay, so that is kerning. Anyway, these are the common type categories or typeface categories. So we have sans serif, serif, slab serif, rounded, script, black letter, decorative, and abstract. Okay, so these are the common typeface categories. So when we say sans serif, or let's start with the serif. So when we say serif, okay, sans serif letter form is one that does, sorry, serif is a small line or stroke regularly attached to the end of the larger stroke in the letter or symbol within a particular font or family of fonts. Okay, so ang serif is a small line or stroke regularly attached to the end of the larger stroke. So for example, we have here letter R. The serif is kaning gagmay nga strokes, right? That is what we call serif. And there are different serif fonts. So we have Times New Roman, Courier New, and so on and so forth, and a lot more. Okay? Sans serif, however, doesn't have any strokes, just like what serif have. Sans serif meaning no serif. For example, we have Helvetica, Century Gothic, Arial, and more. And then we have slab serif. Slab serif is just another type of serif. However, if makabantay mo, iyahang stroke are much bigger compared to the regular serif. So example is Rockwell, and there are more um, examples of slab serif fonts. And then we have rounded fonts or typeface. So rounded is characterized by rounded corners. Diba? Corners, then they're called rounded typeface. And then we have script. Script typefaces are based upon the varied and often fluid stroke created by handwriting. So mura siya handwritten, that is called brush script. Example is brush and then script na. And then we have black letter. Black letter, also known as Gothic script or Gothic minuscule, was a script used throughout the Western Europe from approximately 1150 until the 17th century. So medyo kind. So example is Old English text. We usually see this sa mga certificates, diploma, basically any old documents. And then we have decorative. Decorative spaces should be used for decorative or ornamental purposes. So we have Algerian, Chiller, so on and so forth. And then lastly we have abstract text or abstract typeface. So these are modern style, mostly characterized by straight lines, bold patterns, and well-defined pages. Okay, so these are the visual elements for graphic design. So we will discuss more of these visual elements as we go along with graphics design. Okay, as we go along with course, mabalik-balik natin siya because in graphic design, kani silang pito, uy masige natong masinati, masige natong ma-meet. Okay, so right now everything is just gonna be an introduction. Everything's just gonna be fundamentals. Basically, we're just ila-ilahon lang nato what are the visual elements. We will be able to know how we're going to use them, and then we will learn more about them as we go along with graphic design. Once we've already start working with Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and the other graphic designing software, we'll know more about these visual elements. Okay. So, do you have any questions, guys?
None, sir.
Sure.
Ano na, sir?
Sir.
Okay, I know
Sir.
medyo taas-taas
Sir.
atong discussion, but again, this is just to keep up with the time
Sir.
that we will, diba, since limited naman kaya atong time na mag-meet, and ug mag-meet ta, ato na lang suliton og maayo. Alright, do you have any questions so far? Sure na, Jud?
Wala,
Wala.
sir.
Alright.
Sir.
Okay,
Answer.
ako may na question. Ako may na question. Alright. Bayon. So what are the visual elements again that we will be I'm sorry, the visual elements for graphic design?
Shape.
Shape, form.
Okay,
Shape,
isa daw.
line,
Kuan daw.
color.
Color, sir.
Binagsa ra guro, kinsay ganahan nga mo sana volunteer. Namoy raise hand sa inyohang kuan sa inyohang Google Meet nga application?
Wala sir.
Wala
Wala man ako.
sa desktop ra guro di ay na di ay. Alright. Ay, it's okay. Kinsay ganahan nga mo volunteer. What are the visual elements that we've just talked about?
Ako, sir.
Sige, sa kinsa ron si
Grant, sir.
si Grant. Sige, go ahead, Grant.
Ang visual elements are line, color, shape, the form, texture, space,
And
and
ang last,
typography.
typography. Okay, very good. Okay, so what are the types of forms? Anybody? Line na pod. Anybody? Types of form. Napa? Wala na yung tao? Right, anyway. Unfortunately, wala ako ka-prepare. Wala pa na ako nahuman ang assessment. So, please bear with me na lang as for the assessment. I'll be uploading it maybe tonight or maybe tomorrow. Ako sa tiwaso ng assessment run. I'll send you the link, guys. This is to assess your learning from today's lesson. And again, if you wish to ganahan mo tanaw og balik sa atong klase, I'll upload this right after this class. I'm going to upload this to my YouTube channel. I'll let you know. I'll give you the link just in case if you wanted to rewatch it. Okay. Again, do you have any questions before we end?
Sir, ang midterm.
Okay, midterm. Okay, so, same question that I received a while ago. Okay. Don't you worry. For now, wa pa mo gumikamit sa CSIT instructors good, but I'll let you know when we're going to have midterm. So you can midterms, huh? Yun na lang. I'll let you know, guys, if we will have midterm. I'll give you a schedule, and it should be a week. Okay, so if I'm going to give you a schedule today, then expect that the schedule should be 1 week from today. Okay, that for you to have ample time to prepare yourself. Anyway, since kamay pa man atong na discuss, I think this is gonna be the um fourth lesson that we've discussed so far. So gamay lang ang coverage. So I'll let you know, guys. For now, I still cannot set a date because we haven't talked with the rest of the CSIT instructor just yet. Maybe if we will have the meeting and then we can decide when. Because I know na university schedule, but then again, since this is computer subject, diba? This is laboratory subject. So we cannot just set it according to whenever we want, or we cannot set it even if we want to. It has to be kana magsabot yung mismo ubang instructors because lisod na magdungan, right? And okay na magdungan sa lain nga subject ninyo, minor, but dili pwede nga magdungan ang mga major. Right? Any other questions so far?
Thank you, sir.
Not a problem. Wala na?
Wala na, sir.
Okay.
Wala na, sir.
All right. If that's the case, can you all turn on your camera real quick? Put your pictures at the kadali. Sige, paabot sa taas ubahan.
Kao na pod.
Gutom ra ba da? Sige. Paabot sa taas ubahan natin.
Mga panyon-tanin uban, sir. Mga
Wala pa nga naligo, oh. Hapon na.
Kung pa'y pagmata na ako.
Kira na. Manang supposedly work from home eh. Pero di ko ganahan magtrabaho sa balay kay masiro katulog. So munang na ako sa eskwelahan. So bahala na. Iwa ko'y mahimo pag na ako sa balay. Anyway, sige. Ready? 3, 2, 1, smile. Alright. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. Alright, I'll see you next, perhaps
Thank
in
you,
our next
sir.
meeting, okay? Amping always.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Annyeong.